Have you ever considered what it would be like to actually like have a potential loss of identity? Today we're going to talk about how like coming out of a position and coming from that position that you've held in high regard for yourself and having that label that you have been living maybe for how long, like maybe
25 years.
25 years, and then exiting a job or exiting a career and then having no sense of what that label is. Hi, I'm Kellie Stewart. This is Kris Lovingood and Amanda Held. And Kris is going to talk to us today what that was actually like for him. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question about if you'd like to actually share what your position was like in the military and how long you were in that position for.
So I was a major in the Army for, I served for 25 years. And I think it goes a little deeper than what you're saying too. It's also we identify first. I'm in the military, so I identify as just in that, and then we identify as a rank, a job, specifically. So I think it's layered.
So there's like a hierarchy to
Sure.
that layer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you're in that position for 25 years, and then you were discharged.
I retired.
You retired.
Yeah.
And what was it like to actually retire?
Well, it was nothing like I thought it was going to be. I think we have this preconceived notion that I can't wait until it happens. There's some elation. I'm excited to return to the civilian world. I've done my time. I think we've all said that. And then reality hits you. Because we do identify as I was a soldier, and then now all of a sudden I'm just Kris. I'm just. And even worse, coming back here to Ohio, honestly. I think a lot of guys who retire, they stay near military installations. They do jobs for contracting companies or stay in the GS realm. So they still work, to some degree in that capacity. For me, I moved back to Ohio. There's not a military footprint here. So it's back with the guys I grew up with, and to them, I'm just that same guy who is really hard for them to believe that I ever made anything of myself. Really, you actually were in charge of people? Yeah.
So how many people were you in charge of?
My last company, I had 230.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people.
And then, so I'm guessing you came out of the military from managing and leading 230 people to none?
I always laugh, before you even retire, you come home and I can't even manage my family. It's like I can't get my 4 kids to do what I want them to do, So, at work, I'm in charge of 230 people, everything I say is to get the organization to go in a certain direction, and then I come home and I can't even get them to take the garbage out. So, yeah, but it's definitely, it is a huge challenge. You have all this responsibility, and I think, personally speaking, I'm a type A personality, so I found pleasure in being in a position of authority. There's a certain persona that goes with it, and so I enjoyed that. And then when that's all stripped away, then what are you left with? So
Interesting, very interesting. So I'm just going to touch on when you first were starting to talk, you said about, I was really excited. I had this elation about coming into retirement, and, I was going to come back into civilian world, and what did that mean? But then you were met with all these exponential challenges.
Well, we all joke, we're gonna grow our hair long, and we're just gonna sleep all day and just have no responsibility. But then reality does hit you, and it's like how do you interact with with civilians? And I think some people do it better than others. It's just all it's personality driven. But how what are those relational issues that you have with those around you? And for some people it's easier, for some it's not. But when you come, there's a commonality. Amanda and I were talking about this before. I can talk to her because I know she's she's in the military, so there's a commonality there.
Yeah.
And so we know some of the same verbiage, some of the same lingo.
Understanding.
Yeah, there's an understanding of values. Not so much in the civilian world. It's not the same.
So what does that actually bring for you? Like, how does it make you feel? Like, or what did you experience like coming out into that state, when you're in that void. Let's just call it the void.
Yeah. Can I just ask, is there a specific example or a memory of a situation that you could speak to a little bit, tell us about?
Put me on the spot.
No pressure?
I can't think of anything specifically.
Did you have a moment after you retired, after you left, where everything kind of just hit you and you thought something was going to go away and then it didn't go away? Or
I think I went to a period of self-reflection, trying to understand. You really are, for the first time in a lot of ways, all you have to worry about is yourself. And so instead of worrying about an organization or subordinates, when I woke up in the morning, I had to worry about Kris. And in a lot of ways, I didn't like who I saw. And that was, that was an epiphany for me. I have some work that I have to do internally. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but that was just a point in my life where I said, okay, all right, I have to find purpose for my life. And that took me a long time. I've been retired for 2 years now. And for that first year, it was really just about, I went back to work for a short period of time, didn't have a passion for what I was doing, had some, family issues that brought me back to Ohio. And only now, recently, just really finding, okay, I want to do stuff that that is meaningful to myself.
That's great. And can you just discuss a little bit about? You said you moved from retirement into a civilian career. You were managing a medical facility.
I was the director of operations for a medical company.
So when you were in that environment, was there a moment where maybe you asked for something to be done, or you were trying to accomplish something, and you're used to things being a certain way when you make requests, and maybe that didn't happen?
Yeah. I think I know where you're going. There's an understanding that when you give an order in the military, that it's going to be carried out to a certain degree, as long as it's not unethical, unlawful, but how you say things, whether it's perceived or not, has meaning. And if in the military we can say something, and it may come off as abrasive, but it's just the condition, it's just the reality of the job that we do.
And it's understood,
and
right?
It's understood. Nobody's going to be offended by the way that Major Lovingood, harshly told you, to go get something done, because it needs to get done before we go home. But if you do that in a civilian job, sometimes it might not be perceived so well.
Yeah.
So,
did that happen to you at all?
Well, the job that I had was actually, it was military owned. And so and it was still in a military town. And so a lot of people that worked there were either a spouse of military. So there's an understanding. A lot of the population that we saw was military related. So even in that, it was kind of a nice segue to come back to Ohio, because it wasn't military, but yet it wasn't really truly civilian. This has been eye-opening coming back to Northwest Ohio. It really has.
Yeah, and I know since we've been speaking for the past couple of weeks, there was a story you told me about falling through the ice in your pond.
Yeah.
And can you tell a little bit about that? Because I just thought it was so profound.
Yeah.
But it was profound and relevant to the topic.
I moved back, and my house has a small pond on it, and I was taking the dogs out for a walk, and one of the dogs fell through the ice, and everything, all common sense aside, I decided that it was going to be a good idea for me to save said dog, and found myself falling into the water at night with nobody around, and I had a moment of sheer terror that I actually asked myself. I said, "This is how it's going to end." After multiple combat tours, I'm going to drown in my pond. Trying to save this stupid dog. And so. And
were there any after reflections or after effects of going through that period? Did it shift you in any way to have that experience?
Not only that, but just control. We don't have the control that we think that we have. We're always, as an officer, I always think I have control, but who really has the control, and how much can I really influence? And at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's about influencing people to accomplish things. And how do you do that through relationship? It's probably more so in the civilian world. You're not going to get anybody to do anything just by telling them. It's at least good organizations don't. I'm going to influence people to get to have come to a common interest, so we can accomplish the goals together.
So in essence, it's a communication in values. If you understand that person's intrinsic value system, then you would start to learn how to communicate to actually speak to that within them.
Right.
But I just want to bring back to what I'm feeling the essence of this whole thing is that when you left the military, there was a loss of purpose. And what in the work that I do, this is really a cornerstone, like purpose and values. And if a person doesn't actually know what their true purpose is, we have this saying, like, those who don't know what their purpose is actually tend to perish. And we see this in people that have been in long-term careers and then retire because they have this fantasy that they're going to be able to relax and like do all these great things, sleep in till lunchtime, I don't have to subordinate or report to anybody. But then pretty soon they realize that they don't have any sense of meaning to their life, right? And so then entropy starts to occur, and entropy of the mind starts to actually take over. And that's where we start to see depressive symptoms and expressions starting to actually occur within the human biology. So would it have been of interest to you to actually be preconditioned to actually leave the military, looking at a new purpose and go into
absolutely. I think the military does a decent job of transitioning, but it's transitioning for a new career. It's not necessarily transitioning to be back into the civilian world, so to speak. So it's well, you have a job here, and now we're going to make sure you have a job.
Yeah.
It's not about you as a person.
The service component.
Correct.
Yeah. And if you could have been of service to something that you really love to do, that really got you, like wanting to get out of bed in the morning, what would that have been? Did you have any idea what that was, potentially?
I think that's the problem. It changes so often. I think I've always liked the medical field. I enlisted as a medic, and so I always thought that I was going to continue to do stuff in the medical arena, and just having went away from that, I had a passion for that, but now it's more just about teaching and mentoring. I think that's where I find myself fitting in, and where I can have purpose.
Okay. And that wasn't really awakened to you until you had to go through this period of challenge to really start to actually look deep into what your life needed meaning for, and to be of service to be able to give back and also to receive for yourself.
Right.
Okay. So this is then again is like understanding the human intrinsic values, or axiology, where each person on this planet does not have the same set of values, and each person is actually specific to what their values are. Did you have any comprehension of what that may mean?
Well, that's a deep question. I think that coming from Midwest Ohio, or Northwest, the Midwest, I felt that these are salted earth people, and I think that shaped me in a lot of ways. Because when you're surrounded, now here I'm sitting next to somebody from Australia, but this area, very blue collar, that shaped me in a lot of ways. And so then going into the military, and then being around such a diverse crowd of people, and certainly that shaped me. And then, that's, I feel like I'm constantly changing, and then maturing. Now that I'm getting older, I think that, so my intrinsic values, I think, are there, but I think I'm caring more for people and others, and I don't know if I've necessarily done that my entire life. Because a lot of times in the military, we're very goal-driven, very goal-oriented, so I'd like to think that I did a fairly decent job of trying to bring along subordinates and trying to, want what's best for other people. But a lot of times, just like in the corporate field or corporate work, I'm sure it's, you're just trying to scratch to get ahead, and you don't have the maturity to think otherwise. You're just trying to, climb that ladder.
Okay. So teleology is another part of like a human intrinsic value system. Teleology means like end in mind, and it's really our true purpose in life. And can you see that potentially you are a leader, And throughout time, you've actually demonstrated, you're still demonstrating that now today. It's just changed form. And there's one thing that is completely certain in our life as humans, as we are, is that everything is constantly changing. It doesn't stay the same.
Right.
That's a universal law. And once we can actually like comprehend and get our mind around that, that as we actually we go into the void of what we actually see as having purpose and meaning to it for us, and then we complete that, and then we create another void on that, so we're constantly ever evolving to a higher level or higher plane. But that true sense of purpose or our teleology never really leaves us. It just changes form over time.
Pretty deep, huh?
Yeah. Pretty deep. I think if you would have asked me a year ago to say, okay, where are you going to be a year from now? I would have missed the mark completely. And so now I ask myself that same question, having come in contact with you guys and kind of the discussions that we've had around here. Where will I be a year from now? Where will we be a year from now? As we
do we ever really know? No.
And how interesting and fun is it to reflect? And I think for me, when I approached that moment of my first rapid growth period, I was like, wow, I just got so enlightened in 6 months. I can't imagine how I could be any more enlightened. And then 6 months goes by. And I think when you find yourself in that feedback loop of appreciating where you're at, but then knowing and understanding that it's going to be completely different. When we have the expectation of things being completely different, I think we move through our day-to-day differently than, oh my gosh, why is this changing?
2 words that you just said that hit me, though, expectations.
Yeah.
So many people have expectations of us, throughout our career, and so now, we have our own expectations. And then appreciation, do we stop and appreciate, I may not be any better off next year than I am right now, or I may not, but I have to appreciate, we only have so many, years on this planet, and so what can I stop and appreciate, or the interaction that I have with people, I need to value that because they're not always going to be here. And, I may say something or do something in somebody's life that may impact them, more than I thought that it would.
The number one thing on the planet that actually creates depression is unrealistic expectations, and our inability to be able to see that in the moment, how what is actually occurring for us is actually serving us. And so part of our work is to actually bring people conscious to that, is that if we can get present to what's happening here right now and see how it's serving us, and we look at the expectations that we have maybe moving forward, but we really go into looking at the expectation, and we look at both sides of that expectation, a benefit, what we're expecting, and a drawback to what we're actually expecting. Then that brings our mind to a full state of consciousness or a state of balance. Then we can actually flow through life with a little bit more ease and a little bit more gratitude and fulfillment. And we were talking earlier about man's search from the Viktor Frankl, and what he wrote about man's search for meaning is about how you actually change your perception. And William James, the forefather of modern psychology, hit that really well. If you can actually change your perceptions, you can change your way of being. And if that's what I love to do, is actually get people to see that if you put unrealistic expectations in there without seeing both sides, then the universe will come and bitch slap you to wake you up to the other side, right?
Every darn time.
Every single time.
Every single
time. So in looking at your expectation of retirement and how that actually didn't give you what your perception was or what it was going to be, but then I'd take you back in to look at what did it give you and how did it actually serve you in that time, and how is that a benefit to you. It brought you potentially to the next stage of your purpose and the meaning to your life, and then we continue that line of questioning throughout time.
And I know I'm not alone, because I talk to all my peers and friends that are retired, and I can't even think of one of them that hasn't gone through that transitional depression to find purpose and what are you doing now. Like I said, we fill those voids with, I got a new job. They'll chase money. They'll find themselves in a position of authority that is similar to what they had in the military, so that it fills that void of power. But is that really filling what you need?
Yeah.
You know, is
That
the
intrinsic
need,
need for purpose.
In essence, it is. If we dive deep into what you just touched on there, the void, right? The void actually drives the value. So what you perceive as missing is what you actually start. That's the driver. That's the core driver. And when we have an awareness to that, then we can see it as how it's actually serving us, right? And like if you say that the core driver is the need to have power in terms of leadership, then people will actually be intrinsically like drawn to those positions. Okay. And there's no right or wrong in that. It's just the universe doing its thing to actually guide you to it. So we want to bring that consciousness to you so that then you can become the driver of that.
Yeah. And that's one of the main things that we focus on in our Hooves retreats is, you know, how has everything served you leading all the way up to this point? How have even the things that you've perceived as challenges or the things that you perceive shouldn't have happened, how are those things, how have they served you? And how has everything that you've just been through up until today prepared you for your next contribution?
I mean, sometimes life is humbling, right? And so the events, I mean, it can be very humbling. And
exactly.
Even the moments of sheer terror and combat shape you, and how it shapes you, you won't find out, for years later.
Absolutely.
And if you're humble, then you actually, look at what happened. A lot of it can be for the better,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just by simply asking the question, like, why is this happening for me? Not to me. Why is this happening for me? And then we can start to really open up and see, different aspects why it's happening for you to be able to evolve. And even later on in time, like you say, if you had this experience back here, but you can't see how that's actually working for you until like 6 years or 10 years down the track. It'll pop in like this.
We call them crucible experiences.
Yes,
those
absolutely.
That shape you as a leader for sure.
And then to me, that's where that actually breeds the most resilience, right? When you can really step into those crucibles and look at how they've been of service to you, resilience is actually born from that.
Yes, every time. And if you look historically back through your life, we get into these moments of panic where we feel like this is the end, it's all over, I'm never going to rise up from this challenge. And then everything's always okay. And then you get to this moment where you're like, oh, wow, I was really reactive or worried or responsive, and it all worked out.
Yeah.
And it all worked out, and it all worked out, and it always works out. But in that moment, we can't always see that. So even sometimes it's just a blanket statement. I don't know how this is serving me right now, but I know that it's serving me, and I'm going to find out soon.
Yeah. Or even asking the question in that moment, like, how is this a benefit to me right now? What is actually occurring for me, like, right now? And then we open up our consciousness, like, through the 7 areas of life, and we link that to what is actually happening for you. We can get you to see that. And then that will change your physiology and really does open your prefrontal cortex and takes you out of the limbic system or the amygdala, and your awareness just goes and able to actually see further than what you are, like right here, right now. So this is part of the work that we're doing here, is to really awaken consciousness and open up your objective reasoning within your own mind.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kris.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another one of our deep conversations.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.